This video explains how to do the problems on Skills Check 23A for our remote learning. The first question asks you to choose one of the following equations that matches the line that's given. The first thing that we want to do is find that y-intercept, which is at 4 here. And so the 4 over here corresponds with that y-intercept. The next thing that we want to do is find that growth triangle. So I have drawn the growth triangle. I have 2 points on my line, and you draw the triangle that matches it. And we can see that this triangle side over here goes down 4 units, and the triangle side over here goes to the right 5 units. That means that our growth rate is -4 over 5. So we are looking for a -4 over 5 for our growth rate. I see it right here, which means that this is the correct answer. Number 2 asks how many solutions the equation has. So our choices are no solution, 1 solution, or infinitely many solutions. In order to do this, we want to simplify both sides. So on the left, we're going to combine like terms, and on the right, we're going to distribute the 2. When we combine like terms, we add 6x plus x, and that will give us 7x. When we distribute the 2, we're going to multiply 2 times 5x, so that will be 10x, and 2 times 4, which will be 8. So our resulting equation is 7x minus 11 is equal to 10x minus 8. Now I have the shortcut here. Since there are different coefficients, 7 and 10, in front of the x when both sides are simplified, we are allowed to stop here because that always means there is 1 solution when we have 2 different coefficients in front of the x's. But if we continue on to try to solve this problem, we would take away 7x from both sides. That would leave us with -11 is equal to 3x minus 8. The next step would be to add 8 to both sides. And the result is -3 is equal to 3x. And finally, we divide by 3. So the solution is x equals -1, which means there is 1 solution. So it's your choice if you want to go ahead and try to solve it to see if there is a solution, or if you wanted to stop here and know that coefficients in front of x's, when they're different on both sides, make sure that the sides are both simplified, then we can stop and say there's 1 solution. I have 2 different ways to solve number 3. The first method is to use proportions. This is the one that I choose to go to most of the time. So here, I have set up a proportion. 210 miles in 3 hours is one side of my equation, 210 miles every 3 hours. And then it says, how long will it take him to drive 455 miles? So 455 miles is on top, since miles is on top on the left-hand side. And we don't know how long it will take, so we have x hours. When we set up a proportion, we can solve it using cross multiplication. So that means I'm going to multiply 210 by x and set that equal to 3 times 455. Continuing on to solve, 3 times 455 is 1,365. And then the next step would be to divide both sides by 210. And that result is 6.5, which means it will take 6.5 hours for Mr. Zingery to drive 455 miles. Now I said I was going to take you through 2 different methods. A second method would be to find the unit rate. So again, if he drives 210 miles in 3 hours, we would divide 210 by 3 to get 70, which means he drives 70 miles per hour. We use that and we do 455 miles divided by 70 miles per hour, and that will give us the answer of 6.5 hours as well. Number 4 asks for the simplified version of this expression. So I have this 6 circled. That means that we repeat whatever is in the parentheses 6 times. Again, I'm going to give you 2 different methods to solve this one. The first is using that fact that you repeat it 6 times so you could expand it out, and that's the expanded form there. And then if we have the same base, so g, 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 those are the same bases, we would add the exponents, so 5 plus 5 plus 5, etc. And then the same base for the h, we would add the exponents there. So that will result in g to the 30th times h to the 12th, which is the correct answer. A method that I would choose is this second method. So what I would do is apply the exponent that is outside of the parentheses, which is our 6, to everything inside the parentheses. So when I do that, it would look like this: g to the 5th raised to the 6th, and h to the 2nd raised to the 6th. When I have a power raised to another power, that means I should multiply the exponents. So either method you choose is fine. They both result in g to the 30th, 5 times 6 is 30, times h to the 12th, because 2 times 6 is 12. Number 5 asks which of the following are not linear functions, and I have found that several students are not reading the question very carefully. So make sure that you read the question. Sometimes it says not, and sometimes it asks for which ones are linear functions. So be aware of that. So we're going to select all of these that are not linear functions. Remember, linear functions can be written in the form of y equals mx plus b. So a is a linear function because it's y equals mx plus b. Part B is not a linear function because it doesn't have that form because of the exponent that I have circled here. If we have an exponent of 2, it forms that U shape on a graph, which is called a parabola. The third one, C, is in the form of y equals mx plus b, so that is a linear function. D is also a linear function. The m is a 1 here that I added, and the y-intercept is a 0 that I added. So that is or can be written in the form of y equals mx plus b. So that's a linear function. And then part E here, we would distribute the x to both things inside of the parentheses. When I do that, x times x is that x squared that I have written here. And then x times 2 is this 2x. So again, whenever we have an exponent of 2, like I do up here, it forms a parabola. So that's why I have that here again. So this is not a linear function because we want a line. So therefore, the solution to number 5, we're choosing all the ones that are not. So that would be B and E. Number 6 asks us to find the growth rate for this equation. In order to do that, we need to write it in this form y equals mx plus b. Once it's in that form, the growth rate is whatever m is. So the first thing that we need to do is remove the x's. To remove the x's here, I would have to add 16x to both sides. So when I do that, the x's are removed from the left and they come over to the right-hand side. So I have 2y on the left, and then I have 16x plus 36 left on the right. So that's what I get here. The next step I would do is divide everything by 2. Divide everything by 2 to get the y by itself. So 2 divided by 2, 16 divided by 2, and 36 divided by 2. The result for that equation is y equals 8x plus 36. I'm sorry, 8x plus 18. And so that tells us that the growth rate is 8. Number 7, we have a diagram that shows parallel lines cut by a transversal. So that means that angles A and B are called corresponding angles. And we should know that corresponding angles are congruent when the lines are parallel. Congruent means they're the same. So that means I'm going to take 6x plus 12 and set it equal to 3x plus 63. And then we use our algebra skills to solve for x. So I'm going to take away 3x from both sides. That leaves me with 3x plus 12 equals 63. Then I'm going to take away 12 from both sides. That leaves me with 3x equals 51. And then I'm going to divide by 3 to get x by itself. So x is 17. Now again, remember to read the directions. We are supposed to find the measure of angle A. So we're not done with the problem yet. X is 17, and we're trying to find the measure of angle A. So that means we're going to take this 6x plus 12 and plug 17 in for the x. So 6x plus 12 becomes 6 times 17 plus 12. And if we plug that into a calculator, we get 114 degrees, which is the correct answer. And finally, we have number 8, which is a review of some geometry concepts we've talked about. We are translating the quadrilateral 5 to the left and 5 down. So we don't literally have to move it to answer this question. We're choosing all of the correct statements. So that means that when we translate this figure, everything about it remains the same. And that's what congruent means. Remember, translations, reflections, and rotations are called rigid motions, which means they produce congruent figures. That means the angles are the same and the sides are the same. If you recall, the only transformation that changes things is a dilation, and that keeps the angles the same but changes the side lengths. So A, it says angles C and C prime have the same measure. Congruent means the same, so that is correct. Then it says that the areas are going to be the same. So if it's the exact same size and shape, that means that the areas are the same, so that is correct. And the perimeters are the same. That is correct because the side lengths all stay the same. So that means the perimeters would be the same. So A, B, and C are all correct answers.